Hey, welcome back to the Koinonia Podcast. On this episode, we're going to be talking about how to have a hard conversation, and it's going to be a conversation about how to have hard conversations. And will it be a hard conversation? We don't know yet. Let's find out together right now. Hey, you're listening to the Koinonia Podcast. My name is Ryan, and I'm your host for today's episode, and I'm joined by Pastor Nick, Pastor Nathan, here with me at the table. How you guys doing today?
Great.
Yeah, I'm doing well.
Fired up.
Good. Awesome.
I've been saving this cup of coffee
Fantastic.
to keep my hands warm.
It is getting chilly in here.
Yeah.
It's either hot and cold in here. There's no in between. So the world we live in. In the last episode, we were talking about how to have not difficult conversations.
Correct.
How to have conflict.
Yeah.
Great.
Disagreeing well.
You were here.
Yeah, I was.
Listening.
How to have
How
conflict.
to disagree well and
How to have conflict.
That kind of takes care of itself.
yeah, right. How to have conflicts.
Only text people, and you'll have conflicts instantly.
No, how to disagree well. And a lot of that came down to that you just need to talk to people and have conversations. So we wanted to then have a conversation about what is that actually like practically, having a hard conversation with somebody. So yeah, we're just going to talk about it and go from there.
Should we start by defining what we mean by hard conversation?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. I don't have a definition.
Great.
you?
Not an official one. I'm not
Right.
about to ask Siri, but the so what comes to my mind is having a conversation when I hear a hard conversation is something that makes me anxious or uncomfortable.
Yeah, so true.
To consider talking to somebody about. Like, it's not just a normal. It's more than a normal interaction.
Yeah.
Or it's really specific, I guess. Sorry, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say a hard conversation is one I don't want to have.
Facts.
Right.
Because what is hard for me might not be hard for you, and vice
Right,
versa.
true.
Oh, that's a good point.
So it comes down to the individuals involved. That would be so for me. Yeah, hard conversation is one I don't want to have.
Yeah. Even if the person on the other side doesn't even know it's coming.
It's true.
Well, and I guess, too, it's always about something, like, it's not hard to catch up about your weekend or,
right.
hard to, I don't know.
It's easy to disguise a hard conversation by having those conversations.
Sure.
Right?
So how are we going to define this? It's the one conversation you don't want to have.
Yes.
It's about something specific.
And it's about something that you consider very important. Otherwise,
Yeah, right.
otherwise you wouldn't bother. You just avoid it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, just avoid it. I would define it as the conversations I want to avoid. Like I'm so, when I know that I need to have a hard conversation with somebody, I'll do one of two things. I'll either just like, before I can think too much about it, just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I'll message that person and say, hey, I want to talk to you about something. Because then
Then you're committed.
Except for that's how you send all your work messages too. So sometimes you'll be like, "Yo, can we
you
catch
never
up?
know, dude.
Can we
You
catch
never
up
know
for
when a
5
hard
minutes?"
conversation's coming. Be ready.
And then I'm like, "Oh man, what did I do?" And then you're like, "Hey, so," then we're like, "So we have this meeting tomorrow. Like, what should we, what do we need to put on the agenda?"
That's funny.
And you were
Maybe I should,
imagining all these things.
Right?
That,
I'm
yeah.
like racking my brain.
Maybe I should.
What did I say? What did I do?
If I say I have a really important thing to talk about, it's just my way of making
committing.
Yeah.
committing to it,
right.
right? Because
Yeah,
then that
it's good.
person is going to then hopefully bring it up and say, "Oh,
Right.
hey, you said you really want to talk about something, and now I'm trapped in it."
Some
I can't.
accountability.
Right, because if you don't-
Accountability.
That's the title we're
Trapped.
looking for.
Yeah.
It's the accountability of it.
Yeah.
So either just do it and get it over with, or message the person. So
Right.
that's how I know it's hard conversations, when I want to do one of those two things.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you approach hard conversations, Nathan? Like, if you have something like that sitting on your chest, and you're like, "Okay, I need to, talk to whoever."
Yeah. Well, my first step is pray,
Yeah.
because it's not just about having the conversation; it's about having it in a helpful way.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So that comes down to my motivation. It comes down to the timing, because just because I'm ready to, or I think I'm ready to have a conversation, doesn't mean that it's going to be helpful for the other person.
Yeah, that's good.
That's so true.
It always surprises, like, when somebody says, you know, like the first thing that I do is pray. Often I'm like, man, that's so good. And then I'm like, shouldn't
In
that
the
always
moment,
be my
yeah.
first response? And it's like always surprises me. I'm like, man, no, that actually is so important. What prayer does for me as, you know, the person going to have the conversation is key.
And I think really that's what prayer is anyway. It's primarily about getting my own heart in the right place,
Yeah.
getting my perspective in the right place so that I'm approaching things in the way God wants me to, right?
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, like you were talking about on Sunday. I mean, when people are listening to this, it won't be this past Sunday.
Right.
But referring to Nathan's message on the man born blind, and you're talking about the blind spots and everything. And it's so true, right? Like that, just kind of like taking that moment to pause and figure out what those are and be ready for that and bring that into the conversation in a healthy way.
Right.
Instead of, because it can just be like attacking in a way,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
If you
Yeah,
don't.
true. It's so a hard conversation is very different than attacking somebody.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe that's a good line to draw.
That's
Well,
true.
okay, so let's draw that line.
Yeah.
What is the
let's
difference?
do it.
The
Good
difference
question.
between
Well, just so we can paint a picture
Yes.
of like we're talking about a hard conversation. How do you go about that and not attack somebody?
yes.
You know, if you're bringing something up.
Yeah, for me, it's all about my motivation.
Yeah.
If and I have to honestly assess that, right?
Yeah.
So, am I doing this? Am I entering into this conversation because I want to prove that I'm right? Because I'm offended? Because or is this because I value this relationship? Because I value this person. So, for me, love is the key in the conversation. If I cannot honestly say that I am motivated by love to have this conversation, then I'm probably not ready for it.
Right. Yeah. That's good.
That's so good. I was going to say, like, not that you can know ahead of time, but I think the fruit of the conversation is also a good tell on that. You know what I mean? It's like if the conversation ends with bringing resolution or building of a relationship in any way, and then that would be a good tell of that, it was a hard conversation compared to attacking conversation, which might end in the opposite. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It might burn a relationship, burn a bridge,
Right.
destroy something. You know what I mean?
Something's
Yeah.
burning down.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's like it walks away worse than it began.
Right.
Yeah.
That's maybe a good way to know.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can't always determine what the outcome's going to be, right?
Yeah.
This is why in
That's why
Rome...
they're hard.
Yeah, it's why they're hard. And it's why in Romans it talks about, as much as it depends on you, live at peace with all people. So I can feel like I'm ready, I can be motivated by love, et cetera, but if the other person isn't ready to have the conversation or their heart isn't in a good place, then the result may not be what I hoped for.
Yeah.
Right.
Hopefully I don't make it worse,
Yeah.
but I'm not in control of that.
Right.
Fully. And that doesn't mean that I shouldn't have the conversation.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. So, what do we do like when we're like, oh, we need to talk about this thing,
Yeah.
but you either the person isn't ready, or you kind of broach the subject and they're just like,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what
Good question.
what do we do with that?
I think if we talk about how to begin a conversation,
Yeah.
then maybe that's the place to start, and then work our way towards what happens if it still doesn't go well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
right.
okay. So we're talking about, we have an example of a
Yes.
hard conversation that we had. So we
Super
could
great
use that as a
Excellent.
case study.
Super hard conversation. Great conversation.
What, was it super hard?
No.
Oh, okay, good.
I'm just
Do you
being
want to?
dramatic.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how hard was it?
I don't know. Ryan started it, so he was.
yeah.
I was the one with the blind
I'm
spot.
trying to remember if this was a situation where I just was like,
Oh yeah, that's what I was
came
going to ask.
at you, or if I not
No,
came
no,
at
you weren't
but
attacking.
If I,
Not at
If
all.
I was just like, hey,
When
let's
you-
talk about this, or if it was like, I messaged you and said, hey,
Yeah.
the next time we talk, can we?
No,
I have
no,
something I
no.
wanna
It
talk
was
about."
we.
I think we finished a meeting, and then I was like instantly like,
Yes.
hey, can we talk?
Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
want to give some context, or do you want? Oh, I can
Yeah,
do that.
no, that's fine. The context. Yeah, I was like, we came out of a meeting and I was feeling like, I think the big thing was I was feeling like we were competing in some way. towards the same goal.
Yeah.
And that we were somehow in this weird competition, and I don't know, it just felt weird.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, you know what? It's better to just put it out there and tell you that's how I was feeling about what was going on.
Yeah.
Instead of just then, because then the issue was, it's like I was starting to see everything that you did or I did through that lens, right?
Filtering it.
Right.
And misinterpreting things, and you know what I mean?
And
Just
I had no idea.
filling in the lines and making stuff up and getting upset and frustrated and angry and, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, we all know how it goes, right?
Totally.
When you start to just kind of like ruminate on something, and then it becomes the lens that you see everything through, and like
You assume other people's motives.
yeah,
and all
right.
that
Yeah.
stuff.
You assume something about somebody, and then it's easy to interpret every action they do as they're doing that thing, you know?
Right.
And it's normally always a bit terrible thing. You never assume good of, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we don't need to work hard to assume someone's doing something terrible, which is maybe a problem. So
right.
So you were talking about how do we start this conversation,
Yeah.
and the way that you approach the conversation, you started not by saying, "Hey, I'm annoyed or frustrated by something
right.
you're doing." You said,
I'm glad that you have such a great memory of how this conversation went.
"I remember," and I'll talk about why I still remember it well.
Yeah.
You said, "Hey, you are a good friend of mine."
Yeah.
And I care about our friendship. And so because of that, I want to talk about something that's bothering me.
That's great.
And so you set it up well. And from that point, I could know that you weren't coming at me saying, you know, Nick, you're doing all these things wrong. You were like, dude, I care about our friendship. So I want to have this hard conversation.
Right.
So in the context of how do we start, that you made it really clear. Like, I care about you. And so let's talk about this.
Yeah. Wow, that was great of me.
It was. It was.
And you hadn't even listened to this podcast
listened
yet.
to
I mean, it's-
Yeah. I
Wow.
didn't even listen to it.
Very
Right.
impressive.
Right.
Yeah,
And so
that's
then, well, I don't know. Should we talk any more about how to start those?
Well, no, I think that's great. You're approaching the conversation because you care about the relationship.
Yeah, right.
And so I think we have to come back to why does God want us to have these conversations?
Right.
And it's because He cares about people. Like He loves people. He cares about relationships, and that's God demonstrated that in sending Jesus, right? So He doesn't want us to just, be like, well, I guess it's just not going to work out, because the person matters.
Right.
The relationship matters. And so He wants us to step into these things because they matter. And it also becomes a kind of a catalyst for transformation in our own hearts.
Yeah.
It becomes a place where God can work. Because that's where He does most of His work, is not when we're having a great day and everything's perfect. It's when things go wrong. It's when the hard stuff comes up, whether it's in a marriage or a friendship or in a work relationship. That's where God changes us.
Right. Totally.
I'm thinking to the last episode with Rebecca, and she was talking about how her and Brian, how when they are in a conflict, one of the things they try to do is like view the conflict as outside of their relationship. So it's like you both have a vantage point on it.
Yes.
And I think that starting the conversation that way kind of it forced that. It was like, hey, we have a friendship.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's this issue, and this issue isn't our friendship. Our friendship is separate from this issue. So let's remove the issue from the friendship, and now let's both
It's good.
both attack the issue together
Right.
Yeah.
from our different vantage points.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good way to start. It's like
Yeah. So
pause and just think about
Yeah.
what is the relationship here and the value of that relationship outside of the issue.
Right.
So the enemy is not the other person.
Right. It's the
thing that could potentially harm this relationship.
Yeah.
That we both care about.
Yeah. Right. And then it's like now you're working together to solve the issue,
Yeah.
not
That's good.
not fighting against each other, right? Which is maybe easier said than done, but
I think.
Most
place
things
to
are.
start.
Right.
when you're having hard conversations, that's probably the case.
Yes.
True. So you brought this up,
Yeah.
and I wasn't really expecting it.
You had
I was
no
just
idea.
Like, yeah, we're planning Easter or whatever we were doing. I don't
Yeah,
remember.
right. This is a while ago. Maybe we should give that context too. Like this was.
Oh yeah, like a year ago maybe or more.
Yeah.
It was in
Probably.
one lockdown.
It was I was outside on the deck. I remember that much.
Oh, you were?
I feel like I was outside when I was talking to you.
Oh, okay.
So it was warm enough to be outside.
Oh, wow.
So
Maybe
this
it
was a phone conversation?
video call.
A video call. Okay.
Yeah.
The best kind.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, because then I could see your face too,
Yeah.
which was key.
Right, that is. And that's worth pointing out.
Yeah,
that,
don't text.
yeah, some
Ever.
some conversations you've got to be strategic. Like if you really want this thing to work well,
Yeah.
then don't kind of position yourself behind the 8 ball already and stack the deck against you.
Yeah.
Like let's figure out, okay, what would be the best environment for this relationship or this conversation to
Yeah,
go
that's
well.
so true.
right?
That's so good.
And yeah, text, bad idea.
Not a good environment.
Publicly in front of everybody else on social media, even
Also
worse.
not great.
Worse.
You know?
Yep.
So yeah, the more of the closest you can get to an in-person exchange, the
Yeah.
better.
Totally agree. Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
So-
Face to face or video to video.
Yeah, video to video. So then next, I guess, in hard conversations is
Yeah.
the person receiving the
That's true.
on the other end. And so listening to you, I had to then have some humility to say, like, okay, Ryan's bringing something up, and whether or not what he's bringing up is right or wrong, he's bringing it up because
You're right.
because you care about me, which we've already established. So then I have to be humble enough to actually listen.
Right.
And it's really tempting to like try and defend myself
Yeah,
and be
so
like,
true.
oh, here's why I'm showing up this way, or here's whatever. And I remember listening and taking in what you were sharing. And I don't know if I really had a great response for you. Because I was just like, I don't know, like what,
Yeah.
because I think part of it was, whatever it felt like we were competing for, I hadn't thought about it until you
Yeah,
brought it
right.
up.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, maybe we are competing for something.
Yeah. Which
So-
is tricky for you because you're like, you know, I had obviously been processing and thinking about it a lot, and you had not, and so now you're like
Yeah.
having to catch up,
Right.
to how much I've processed it.
Right. And so I think I started off by listening and receiving, and then being like, dude, I'm sorry. Like that's
Yeah, right.
not what I want to do. If that's what I'm communicating, like I don't want to compete against you. Like what? No, I'm sorry for coming
Yeah.
off that way. And I think that's kind of where we wrapped up. But then I
Yeah.
came back the next day.
Yeah, right.
Because then I went away from that conversation and I was
Processed
like,
it.
yeah. And
Which I
was
think
like,
is good too, to know like it's okay to just,
Absolutely.
you know, in the moment, just be like, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
and not try to process it in the moment, because
Yeah.
then you might fall into that leaning towards getting defensive or start to make excuses, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just being like, I'm sorry, and then looping back to it after
Yeah.
you've had more time to process it. So
Totally.
this is a great case study.
yeah.
So one of the things that I think it's worth kind of drawing attention to is a focus on each person seeking to understand
Yeah.
first.
Right.
Because you know, if you go into a conversation like this trying to make yourself understood as your highest priority, you know, that's when you start accusing and blaming and, you know, you did this and so on. But when the goal is first and foremost, because you care about the person and the relationship, to understand, right? So
Yeah.
that's what you were talking about. It's like,
Right.
wow, I need to think about this.
Yeah.
I
Like
need-
if he's bringing it up,
yeah,
he might be right.
right. Yeah. So
Right.
so seeking to understand is a posture of humility,
Right.
because it assumes that there may be something I'm missing. Whereas when I go into a difficult conversation with my goal to make myself understood,
Right.
I
Wow, that's
tend
good.
to be assuming that I'm in the right.
Right. It's like coming fully loaded.
Yeah, you're
you know?
the person that I'm talking to. You're the one who doesn't understand.
Right.
You're the one who's missing something. So therefore, I need to make sure that I fill in all of the blanks
I
that
need
you're
to
missing.
enlighten you.
I need to enlighten
Yeah.
you. So it tends to be inherently a prideful way to approach the conversation.
Right.
Whereas if you come assuming you could be missing something, in fact, assuming the best,
Right.
I think is a good posture as well.
Yeah.
You
Which
know,
is what you did.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm assuming that you didn't mean to hurt me until proven otherwise.
Yeah,
You
right.
know, I'm assuming you didn't mean to hurt me, you didn't
Yeah.
mean to offend
Yeah.
me. So I want to understand what happened here. Where was the misunderstanding?
Right. That's good.
Yeah, that's so true. I wasn't coming into that conversation. I know what my own feelings were trying to make me assume
Yeah.
about
Right.
what you were trying to do, right? But I was able to disconnect from that and be like, no, I can't just
Yeah.
let that run its course
Yeah.
and be like, there's a misunderstanding here. There's something I'm missing. So I'm going to seek out finding those missing puzzle pieces.
Yeah.
Right.
To
And
good.
I
wrap
like how
this up.
I like how you identified that you had to like disconnect your desire to respond from how you were feeling.
Yeah.
Because in hard conversations, we feel a lot of things.
Yeah.
And that can't be what is our motivator or
Yeah.
our guide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think is good.
Yeah, like being emotionally charged.
Yes.
Yeah. Which I think comes back to what you're saying about maybe before you even approach the conversation, pray about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like bring that piece into it because that's going to help kind of, sort through those emotions and maybe
Yeah.
get some clarity yourself before you go into the conversation.
True.
Yeah, our emotions are given to us by God to help us discern deeper issues, right?
Right.
So if I'm feeling fear, the question is why? If I'm feeling anger, the question is why? So, yeah, you got to back up from those emotions and say, what is going on here? Oh, I'm feeling angry because I felt unappreciated or taken for granted or something like that. The anger itself is not the issue. It's what does it tell me? So that's why you have to get
Yeah.
that disconnect from the emotion. Otherwise, it's just going to fog your mind, and you won't even be able to hear
Right.
because you'll tell yourself that you're trying to understand, but you're not. You're just angry, and it's clouding your whole rational process.
Yeah. So I feel like when when my emotions are high, my natural response in that fog that you're describing is to be like, I should do something about this. And that thing that I should do is almost always a bad idea. So like, what do we do when we find ourselves in that like emotional fog? I mean, we talked about prayer, which is huge. What else do
Yeah.
we do? Like,
Well, we need to clear the fog.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's the key. So
start doing this.
Yeah.
Put the fog lights on.
Yeah. Yeah. What is going to clear the fog? And prayer is a major part of that. Going to God's word is a major part of that. Worship can be a major part
Yeah,
of that.
totally.
And potentially having a conversation with somebody else.
Yeah, I was going to say that too.
So that's an important kind of
To
piece.
write somebody else.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yes.
that's a tricky one because
Yes.
it's like you don't want it to be like I'm going to
Gossip.
go,
Yeah.
gossipy or
Yeah, well, you could have easily gone to somebody else in that meeting after the call instead of me
right.
and being like, man, Nick is just killing me. Like, what,
Yeah,
you know?
right.
Who does he think he is?
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, going to the right person, I guess.
So who would be the
Key.
right person? Yeah.
yeah, right.
yeah.
I think that would probably be different for everyone, but someone that you trust, someone that
Yeah.
is going to help you sort through those kind of like you're saying, ask those why questions to the feelings and help you kind of process that
good.
and sort that through. And someone, you trust to keep what you're saying, between the two
Confidential.
of you. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so a counselor, a pastor,
Yeah.
close friend.
Yeah.
I find I have to sometimes go to somebody who I know is not just going to immediately like be on my side.
Right.
And
Console you.
That's so good.
Yeah, and just
Yeah.
like, because I know
You're
there's
so
people.
right.
Yeah,
Yes.
I know.
Nick is such
There's
an
people
idiot.
that I can go
Yeah.
that I can go to.
They're
you
wrong
know,
and you are right.
Yes.
Totally,
yeah,
and they'll sit me
yeah.
down and just massage my shoulders, put ice pack on my head, and be like,
Yeah.
"Dude, yeah,
Yeah.
you're totally right."
Yeah.
That's not the right
Yeah.
No.
person to help clear the fog.
Yeah. True.
yeah,
Yeah, that's so true. I think about like maybe not in the context of like having hard conversation with somebody, but like even if I'm just processing something that's happening, I always go
Yeah.
to like my one cousin because he likes to play devil's advocate on stuff.
Yeah.
So even if he maybe totally agrees with what I'm saying, like he'll throw the complete opposite back at me just for kicks.
That's awesome.
But it's so good because it makes me, you know what I mean?
Really think
makes
about
me
it.
really think about all sides of it. and be aware of like those blind spots on things. So it's like, that's so valuable.
Yeah.
It can be helpful if the person you talk to knows the individual.
Right. Has some
context
right.
for it.
emotional context.
Yeah.
Because they can be like, you know what, that doesn't sound like Nick. I haven't experienced him that way. Have you considered this? You know, have you thought about that? So that can sometimes be helpful. But yeah, it's got to be somebody who is in a position to help.
Yeah.
Not somebody who's just going to tell you, what you want to hear, what they think you want to hear, and just kind of pile it on Nick, you know?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The guy's the worst. So anyways, so I went away after we talked, and then I had some things to think through and process, because I needed to take the words that you said and think about them, spend some time praying about them. And I had to consider, like, Ryan might be right about how I've been showing up, even if I'm not aware of it.
Yeah.
So I did some praying and thinking about it, and I remember like how helpful that was, because I was not purposefully trying to compete with you. But what I realized was, so we were in lockdown, and when my plate is not that full, like in lockdown, it's different. My tendency is to just be like, who can I help? What can I do?
Right.
And just fill it with stuff. And so I can see how me just being like, I'm here, I got time, I want to help with stuff, is really easy to perceive as like trying to compete with your responsibilities, because we were working on a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah, right.
And so that helped me see like, oh, wow, no, this is actually a me problem. Not even necessarily about the project we were working on together, but the problem was that when my plate is not that full, I just look for whatever I can to fill it instead of doing that purposefully. And so in doing that, I was like totally, coming into your sphere.
Right.
When we were working on some of that same stuff. So then the next day I went back and I shared some of that with you.
Yeah.
And I was just like, dude, no, you do your thing, and I want to support you as best I can. Anyway, so that's kind of how it resolved.
Yeah.
It's good.
I think, right?
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I remember messaging you in the morning. I'm like, bro, we just got to finish what we talked about yesterday, because I think I have some more helpful things to
which is great
to share.
to loop back to it.
Yeah.
And find the resolution in it.
Yeah.
And you were saying yesterday how you still think about it.
Totally, because I was thinking about it this week, because now whenever I look at my calendar and I'm like, oh, I've got some more time here, I can help somebody, I can jump in on something, whatever. And even in meetings when I'm not the one leading, or it's not my project or whatever, like I really think about that conversation, because it makes me think about how am I showing up now?
Right.
Because all along it was not about us competing. It was about how I was responding to something going on, in me. So I think about it often, and I'm like, all right, I don't have a lot going on. Like, I intentionally approach that now, instead of just barging in and being like, hey, I think I can do this. Being like, hey, how can I, how can I help?
It's good.
So the fruit of that hard conversation, I've still experienced, because I still think about it.
It's good.
Yeah.
And I think in that there's a difference that we have to acknowledge between intent and impact, right? Because your intent was to be helpful. Your intent was to, lift weight,
Be
whatever.
a servant.
Be a servant, yes. But in the process, the impact was not that.
Yeah.
The impact didn't lift. It actually brought confusion, lack of clarity, uncertainty.
Yeah.
So when we're in those places and we get that revelation, that understanding, oh, wow, those are things to acknowledge and own, right? And I think that's a key in hard conversations, is humbly looking for the things that we can own.
Right. And be like, yeah, actually, you're right. Like,
Yeah.
I was,
Rather than getting defensive.
right.
And
so hard.
justifying.
So hard.
Yeah. Which is why listening is huge in a hard conversation. And in our listening, not listen so that we can load our gun
Yes.
and
Yeah,
be
think
ready.
about how we're gonna fire back.
Yeah. No, we listen with a posture of humility, motivated by love, care for the person, or and care for the goal, the thing that we're trying to accomplish together. All of these things.
Yeah.
And so we're listening in order to understand, not listening in order to defend ourselves. And there's a big difference.
That's so hard. I feel like when I'm in those listening moments, the like emotional defense armies in my brain are just like, like it's time to go.
Yeah, right.
Right. That is hard to like, okay, just, relax and take in.
Just listen. Yeah, that is so hard.
Super hard.
And I think one of the things you did, Ryan, that would have really helped was entering the conversation by kind of clarifying the intent.
Yeah.
So that, because if you had approached it by, Nick, when we were in that conversation, in that meeting,
you said
you
this.
really seemed to like be taking control, and this thing you said, it really hurt. If you approach,
Even though that's probably what was happening.
Yes.
Right?
Quite possibly. Yeah.
Quite possibly, yeah.
Yeah. If you begin
Yeah.
the conversation like that, the person's their back is against the
Yeah,
wall already, and so again, we're not setting up for success. We may be getting to the thing we want to get to as quickly as possible, but the outcome is probably not going to be helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so interesting. Just the idea of like jumping into our conversation, but just coming at someone saying like, oh, yeah, that thing you did hurt me. Like that puts the other person in a really tough spot, right? Like it's hard for that person not to go instantly to the defensive zone or just, trying to like bring clarity to it instantly. It's like, oh no, that's not it. It's this. And like try to, instead of it being like, okay, let's like figure this out together.
Right.
Yeah, because I think to have success, we need to acknowledge the impact.
Yeah.
Even if the intent was completely different, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's important that we acknowledge the impact because it is what it is. Like it hurt.
Right. Yeah.
It led to these things, these feelings. And so if we dismiss those, then we've unintentionally perhaps communicated we don't care about the person.
Right.
Because they went through this thing. They experienced this thing.
Yeah, the hurt is real.
The hurt is real. And so I think that's the place to begin. Once you realize that you've hurt someone, is acknowledge it, own it. Be like, wow, I am so sorry.
Yeah.
That's not what I intended. I can see that I hurt you. Forgive me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So good. I'm thinking just in this conversation about another hard conversation I've had in my life where I was on the other end, like the recipient of the conversation. And, whatever. Don't need to go into details. But I walked away from it not feeling attacked, but just like almost in shock. You know what I mean? Like where the person was just like throwing at me and saying, you are this.
Right. And you finish the
Period.
conversation,
You know
you're
what I mean?
just like,
Yeah.
And
where
it was
am
like,
I?
wow, that was really hard to hear. Someone just like straight up. And I really had to like walk away from it and just be like, either they're right and maybe they didn't say it in the nicest and most gentle way.
Yeah.
Right? Or they are wrong. You know what I mean? Like, and maybe they misinterpreted something on their end and are calling something out. And I just remember kind of just walking away being like, I can process this on my own. I can listen to the Holy Spirit and really just being like, if this is true, if what he said was true, then like God will help me work through this and figure this out. So that's tough.
How did it go?
It went good. I think I honestly don't necessarily think the thing that the person said was true, but I think that it led me to discover some other things.
Yeah.
Yeah, often it's somewhere in between, right? There is some truth.
Yeah.
Because, again, even if the person is wrong about our intention, wrong about our motives, wrong about who we are, we still played a part.
Right.
Yeah.
In it.
They're still hurt.
Otherwise, there wouldn't have been this issue, right?
Yeah.
So even if it's the smallest thing, I think we can acknowledge it and we can say, wow, that piece is correct. That's right. I missed it there.
Right.
I was insensitive. I jumped into things and didn't think this through. I didn't consider how I might come across. All of those things are valid things that we can acknowledge and take away.
Yeah.
I just thinking about when you're in those hard conversations, a lot of the way you say things can, take the conversation in different directions.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So maybe we could just go over maybe some of the,
Yeah.
the ways to say something, like the way to tell somebody, like I'm just thinking back to this example, like for someone to just look at me and say, you are X,
Right.
that's pretty harsh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a different ways you could say, because
Absolutely.
that person was putting an identity on me
Yes.
that
Yeah, that's
they
not
thought
helpful.
Yeah. Right? So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, that wasn't maybe necessarily the right way to do it. But what is a way that you could say that to somebody
Right.
in a more helpful way?
Yeah.
I don't have an answer.
Yeah, when you said this
Yeah.
is how I felt. So I'm owning the way I felt. And I'm not saying you made me feel. I'm saying when you said this is how I felt.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
right.
if you start saying you made me feel, now it's their fault.
Because that is like you're owning it when you say this is how I was
Yeah,
feeling.
yeah.
Right.
Because if I immediately make it that person's fault, well, they could have said that same thing to 20 other people, and it would have had a different impact,
right.
Right.
potentially.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe not, but potentially.
Yeah.
And so you're saying this is the way I felt, and so that keeps the issues separate. Right. You're not firing back at the person and saying you made me feel.
Right. That's good. I think something else that I've learned, I guess, is to when I'm bringing something to somebody, starting with like, "Hey, can you help me understand why?"
Yeah, that's a good one. Help me
this,
understand.
or
Love that.
I'm confused about this, or I'm puzzled by this, because that kind of goes back to what you were saying about approaching the hard conversation as if you don't have all the information.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
And it's
Yep.
The
it's not
intent
like
is
you're
understanding.
yes, and it's not like it's not like you're giving the other person an opportunity to defend themselves. It's like you're giving an opportunity for you to understand.
Right.
And I think those are
right.
different.
That's so interesting.
Like,
Yeah.
attacking somebody and then it's like, you finish and you're like,
Yeah. Got that off my chest.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Right.
and then, subconsciously you're like, okay, now it's your turn.
Yeah.
And that's like totally not
Yeah.
helpful in it.
It's like debate zone.
Yeah.
I had my 3 minutes. Now it's your turn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And
Right.
and so to approach with like, hey, can you help me understand, X? That is, I don't know if that's necessarily a bullet you're firing. It's more of an invitation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
to-
right.
Say, hey, help. Help me.
Yeah.
It's almost like giving them an opportunity to enlighten you, to maybe defend themselves, like realistically, in a healthy way.
Yeah,
right?
Clarify.
Yeah. To
Yes,
clarify
yeah,
things.
yeah. That's maybe more helpful than defense.
Yeah, not defend
'Cause-
themselves, but
yeah.
clarify what's going on.
Right,
Before you've launched any grenades.
right,
Right. Because that's the challenge. If somebody's already launched grenades at me, you are this,
go.
you did,
yeah,
it makes it difficult for me to clarify, and it makes me much more inclined to start defending myself.
right. Because they've already decided
They've already
how
decided,
you, who they think you are.
yeah. They've assigned motives to me. They've assigned an identity to me, and I don't like it. I don't like that. Doesn't
Yeah.
fit for me. So now I can end up feeling like I need to do the same to them, right?
Yeah.
Which is where you end up with this war of words.
Yeah,
going on.
right. Which
Turn-
doesn't end great.
No.
Yeah.
And you forget why you even got into the issue in the first place.
Right.
So
Yeah, it becomes more about hurting each other than it does
Yeah.
about
the
even-
original issue.
The original issue,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any other like specific language that you would?
I was thinking about apologizing, about how to just really say sorry without
Making excuses.
making excuses. Or something I've had to work on.
Interesting.
Yeah.
In context of marriage, it's like, having that conversation and then wanting to say sorry. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, but blah, 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 right?
Yeah, the
It's
word
like-
but doesn't
the
fit
but
great
does not go
after I'm
great
in sorry.
after sorry.
Kind of cancels it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
because it's like, I'm guessing maybe I'm making that attempt to bring that clarity, and it's like, no, but there's a missing piece here, and I have to fill it in. So I'll just disguise it with an apology.
Yes.
Instead of being actually
Yeah.
sorry.
It's
and
not
just
authentic.
saying, I am sorry.
Yeah.
Right.
And just
owning it.
and just leaving it at that. Just
Right.
like completely
Yeah.
owning it.
And attaching it to the thing that I'm sorry for, I
Mm-hmm.
think is helpful. You know, sometimes people just say, I'm sorry. And you're like, I don't think you fully understood, you know?
It's like every parent with a toddler.
absolutely.
Like, can
Right.
you
Say you're
apologize?
sorry.
And they're just like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You're
Yeah.
like, well,
Say it
tell
like
them,
you mean it.
Tell them why.
I'm
I remember
really sorry.
my mom used to like make my sisters hug for like 5 seconds.
Yeah, that's a classic.
It was so
Yeah.
funny. Like they would apologize. She'd be like, "Guys, you're sisters. You're going to be sisters forever. Now I want you to hug each other.
Yeah.
You hold on." And Clara would just be like,
Yeah,
"The younger
right?
sister."
Yeah.
Sorry,
So
I interrupted you.
That's all right.
We act like toddlers
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. So I'm sorry for hurting you in this way.
Yeah.
And be specific. I think the
Yeah.
more specific we can be,
Yeah.
the better, because it tells the person that we heard them and that we really addressed the issue.
Yeah, we recognize it.
Yeah, because if it's
Yeah.
a blanket, I'm sorry, the person can go away not being sure that they were understood.
Yeah.
Yes.
So one of the pieces I think in this that can be really helpful is to reflect back what you heard, right?
Yeah, like use their language.
Yeah, because
Right.
remember we were saying
Yeah.
the goal is to understand, right? So if the goal is to understand, then I want to make sure I understood. So in making sure I understood, it can be helpful to re-articulate. You know, so if I'm understanding you correctly,
Yeah.
right? If I heard your heart,
Yeah, what I hear you saying is...
what I hear you saying is, and then they can say, "That's right. That's exactly right." And then you can say, "I'm so sorry for," and then you can express it.
Right.
Yeah. Also not trying to use sorry as just like a hard stop on it.
No.
You know what I mean? It's like, I'm just going to
Right.
Terminate this
I'm
conversation.
going to terminate the
yeah.
conversation. I'm just going to say sorry so that it's like, boom, this is over. And I
Fixed.
don't have to like
Yeah.
Yeah.
face up to taking ownership of whatever
Right.
the thing is being talked about, right?
Yeah.
That's also something I struggle with. Full disclosure.
Oh yeah.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
it's
It's
totally-
hard. You know, it's
yeah.
like
That's why they're called hard conversations.
Yeah.
panic and just being like, I don't want to be in this conversation. I'm sorry. It's all
Yeah.
better now. I'll run
Right,
away.
right.
But that's like actually not helpful at all.
Totally.
And depending on how that conversation goes, we can then ask the person, "Would it be okay if I share my perspective on this?" Right.
Yeah.
So you don't want to defend yourself, but depending on the relationship, it may be worth clarifying
Yeah.
intent if they can hear it.
Totally.
As long as you can do it without defending yourself. Right?
Yeah.
Because you want clarity. So the priority is to understand, but secondarily, if there's space for it, to be able to express your own perspective and your intent.
Right.
So you acknowledge the impact, but then you express your intent in a way that helps them understand as well.
And that may require like a circle back to the
May
conversation.
do.
totally.
Like
May do.
in our situation.
And maybe it takes 3 or 4 conversations.
Yeah.
You know what I
Right.
mean? It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be so,
Yeah.
One and done.
yeah. Or 2, you know,
Yeah.
it could be ongoing. It could come up again, you know, and you could loop back and say, hey,
Yeah.
remember 2 years ago when we talked about that thing? It's, you know, it's
Yeah.
like we're all on a journey and we're all human, and things that we think we've fixed become broken again.
Yeah.
Something
do.
I was just thinking about too is, you know, we're kind of painting this conversation as, you know, someone has an issue, they go to the person, and it's kind of like there's the person saying the things and there's the person receiving it.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about, you know, if there is an apology situation, saying I forgive you to the person too. You know, it feels like sometimes person says sorry and it's like, okay, good. I got my apology out of
Right.
you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah.
See ya.
Instead of, you know what I mean?
Yeah. True.
Taking ownership and saying, yeah, you know what? I forgive you. Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's helpful too. It's
Yes.
helpful for both sides.
Yes.
It's helpful for the person saying I forgive you because that's bringing a certain amount of peace and
Closure.
to it.
Yeah.
And it's also letting that other person know that that's where things are. You know, that's like something we've trying to reinforce with the kids because it's easy for, hey, apologize to your sister for doing this, right? And it's like, oh, I'm sorry. And it's like, hey, say I forgive you to your sister,
Do you forgive them?
right? And like those two things go hand in hand.
Right.
It's not just sorries.
Right.
as much as we like
Yeah.
to in Canada.
And yeah, and we model it, right, for our kids,
Right.
and for other people in our world. We model this kind of behavior, and sometimes it doesn't go the way we hope, and
Yeah,
so
that's true.
it might be worth
Yeah, we should
talking a bit
acknowledge
about that.
too. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not
Our case study is-
this isn't
Yeah.
like the
Pretty joyous.
the manual to have one of these conversations. If you follow this 10 steps,
Yes, guaranteed.
guaranteed
Yeah.
that the conversation will be great. It'll
Yeah.
end well.
Yeah.
It's like it's not that clean cut.
Yeah.
Right. But what do we? So, what? What do you?
I don't know.
What do you do? You know, like
Yeah.
if so, you come to me and you share with me, you know, hey, this is how I'm feeling, and I just was totally like, no, you're wrong.
Yeah,
like
right.
I'm not. You know, you're wrong. What you thought was incorrect, and that's not what I was trying to do. And you know, see ya.
Peace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, if conflict continues, bringing in a third party into the
Right.
situation
Yep.
to help resolve things. You know?
Right.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
biblical.
Introducing another
Right.
voice.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
again, why do we do it? Not so that we can prove we're right. So
Yeah.
it can't be like get somebody else on your side.
Yeah, find the person who agrees
To-
with you
to gang
so
up
you
on-
can
yeah.
team up on someone.
It's still about the relationship.
Yeah.
Right? Because coming back to where we started,
Yeah, the
that's what
motivation.
matters, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
I value this person. I value this relationship.
that's so good.
Therefore, I want us to hear each other. I want reconciliation, if at all possible.
Mm-hmm.
So the person we bring in is a neutral person. It's not somebody who is on our side, because that will become apparent very quickly. And the other person will just become more defensive, and they're going to think, "Oh, so you brought somebody else to gang up on me?"
Yeah.
right?
Great. Thanks.
yeah, right. That's not helpful. Then they're gonna bring somebody.
Yep.
and now
You'll have a gang war. Yeah, yeah,
A giant battle
yeah.
in the living room.
I was just thinking about something, but I don't remember what it was.
Nice.
So maybe it wasn't good.
Love that. Circle back to it.
We'll circle back
Yeah.
when it comes up.
Yeah, so if it doesn't go well, this is why the motive at the beginning,
Right, is-
you have to be
Yeah,
clear
that's
on
such
that.
a good,
Yeah.
good
Be-
place to
because
start.
because if your motive from the beginning was to hear the words "I'm sorry,"
Yeah, wow.
You might not get it.
you may not get it. And can you be okay with that? Not happy with it, maybe, but
Right.
can you be okay with that? Because and allow God to do the work in the other person.
Wow.
Because
Yeah.
there are some people who will never say I'm sorry. There are some people that will never come to the realization of what they've done and the impact of it. So what do we do in that situation?
Yeah.
So this is why it says, as much as it depends on you, be
Yes.
at peace with all people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's having the conversation not just for the benefit of the relationship, but because of my own heart. I need to make sure my own heart is right. I need to express value for this person, express value for this relationship, because my heart needs that before God. And so, yeah, it may not go well, but I did what I was called to do. So I didn't burn the bridge. I didn't, give up on the relationship. I valued the person and the relationship enough to have a difficult conversation, and then I leave it with God.
Yeah,
and let
so
him take it from there. And it may be a year or 2 or 3 later, and they
Yeah.
do
Right.
come around, or it may be that it never happens. But my responsibility is to own my peace,
Right.
in it.
Yeah, that's good. Should we do a little summary of all the things
This has
that
been a
have
great conversation.
come up?
Yeah.
Because we talked about the importance of how to start the conversation
Yeah.
with the proper motivation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being
Taking the time to maybe pause, pray,
Yeah, right.
process your feelings, figure out the why behind what you're feeling.
Yeah.
Maybe have a conversation with somebody else who
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
help you.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then have the conversation.
Yeah.
And then using the we talked about the right words to use to start that, and then kind of as the person, I guess, shifting, the person receiving, needing to be able to kind of calm whatever's going on inside of you as you're hearing the words, so you can actually hear,
Yeah.
and listening
And seek
Key.
to understand.
Yes,
And even as the person in your example going in to that conversation, me as the one who's been hurt,
Right.
opening up the door for clarity before I assume. So I'm believing
Yes.
the best of the other person.
Yes. Right.
You know,
Yeah,
so here's
that's
what
so good.
happened. Can you help me understand? I'm puzzled. When you said this, what did you mean by that?
Right.
I think I know what you meant. I certainly felt a whole lot of things,
Yeah.
but can you help me understand what you meant by that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what comes after that?
Well, the apology piece, you know, if you're saying sorry,
Right.
the right way to say sorry. Don't use it
Yeah.
as
Right.
a
As
way
an
to.
excuse to. Yeah.
Yeah, don't follow it up with a list of excuses
But
Yes.
or
Well,
use it as a way to just put a hard stop on the conversation, but really mean it and bring in I'm sorry and then acknowledging
Right.
the feelings that were felt.
Right.
And
And before you get to that, potentially it's helpful to reflect back to the person what
Yeah,
you think
right.
you understood, so that when you say I'm sorry, you can be as specific as possible.
Right. Yeah. Being specific.
And then the other piece is maybe there's the other side to this, where you can ask the person, would it be okay if I share with you how I experienced this?
Yeah.
You know, and then you can clarify intent, not as an excuse, because you've already owned the impact of it,
yeah.
but so that the person can know where you were really coming from, for the sake of the relationship. Again. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think to wrap it all up, it's just acknowledging like it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
And I think
Absolutely.
it's a learning process, right? Like you can be in a hard conversation and maybe it goes really well and you kind of hit all these beats and then the next one
10 out
maybe
of 10.
not, you know what I mean? It's not
Yeah.
it's not always going to get it right, but it's
Yeah.
Right.
being humble, being gracious with each other.
Believing the best.
Believing the best are all going to be helpful for that, right? And always working on it and
Yeah.
being willing to try harder the next time around. Yeah.
It's good.
This was a great conversation.
Thanks
I
for
feel like I learned something.
Thanks for letting us case study.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. And it was a great example. And I hope everyone listening took something away, something to work on, something to
Put
be
into
proud
practice.
of that they are working on and that they've kind of feel like they're getting a handle on.
Yeah.
And we're all on a journey and we're all in this together. What a great conversation that we had in today's episode. If you took something away, why don't you share it with someone? If you know someone that could benefit from hearing what you just heard or seeing what you just saw, why don't you share it with them so that we can all continue to have these conversations about things that we deal with in everyday life and this journey that we're on, because we are all better together. Make sure that you're subscribed so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes, and we will see you in the next one.